come on a journey with a cinephile.
Wake up, sucker. We're thieves and we're bad guys. That's exactly what we are.
We was getting too big for our britches.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
What have you done to its eyes?
I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Pretty well, little brother. Pretty well.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of horror cinema, from the eerie classics to the latest spine-chilling releases. Join me as I explore the history, themes, and artistry of horror one film at a time. Whether you're a seasoned horror fan or just stepping into the shadows, this journey is for you. So dim the lights, embrace the fear, and let's talk horror. And let's do that on episode 282. So this is me moving over into, actually, let me introduce myself first. I am David Garrett Jr. I am your tour guide. And like as I was saying, this is going to be my Voyage to the Fives. This is the first episode I'm doing of these as I start to work through, years that end in 5, start with 1935. And the two feature reviews I have here, first is going to be Mad Love. This one is a take on the novel about the Hands of Orlok that features Peter Lorre. And then I'm pairing this up with The Gorge. This is a new one that, since I'm still not able to go to the theater, I'm trying to find ones that are streaming. This one features Miles Teller and the lovely Anya Taylor-Joy. Now, this one actually makes for an interesting through line here, is that both of these featured romance and obsession, but in kind of different ways that they're using it. And then kind of sticking with that vein, my rewatch here for the Voyage to the Fives from 1965 is going to be Repulsion. This is, unfortunately, the Polanski film. And then going along with that, I'm going to be watching, I've already watched Baby Oopsie 3, Burn Baby Burn. I gave a rewatch to A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dream Child. I'm checking out the Blu-ray for that one. Then I also got to watch on Canopy my first Jean Roland film of Lips of Blood. And then I have a documentary here about the Boggy Creek Monster. And then I'm going to be also covering, it's not necessarily horror, but we have some horrific elements into it with witches and stuff. That's going to be Agatha All Along as I continue to work through those Marvel properties. I have 3 episodes to cover. So I don't think there's anything else to do here for this intro except saying thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy coming on this journey with me.
Pod Nation TV has you beamed up with Out of This World award-winning podcast, found exclusively on Pod Nation TV. Download Pod Nation TV for Roku and Fire TV. Pod Nation TV, Out of This World.
And for my first mini review here is going to be Repulsion from 1965. This is co-written and directed by Roman Polanski. Now, this is also written by Gerard Brock and David Stone. Now, this stars Catherine Deneuve, Ian Hendry, and John Fraser. This is a psychological horror thriller drama film that is from, I believe, the United Kingdom. Yes. And this is currently sitting on a 7.6 on IMDb. And over on Letterboxd, we are sitting on a 3.9. With our synopsis being, a withdrawn manicurist who disapproves of her sister's boyfriend sinks into a depression and experiences horrific visions of violence. So this is one that I sought out after college. I'm not sure if I was working through Polanski's filmography or if my mother recommended it, but I remember seeing this when I was living with my grandmother, and it captivated me. I've been curious to revisit this one now that I've sat, with it after a second watch, as I'm doing it here for a Through the Fives. And where I want to start is that let's go ahead and just get this business with our co-writer and director Polanski out of the way. It is interesting that he did this movie as it explores things that hits pretty close to home to him. I am separating the artist from the person, and I might incorporate things in here though, but I just wanted to make sure that is known. Other than that, my initial thoughts the first time around was that this is amazing. It's a simple premise, more of a character study of Carol here, who is portrayed by Devino. And there's some subtle things that get introduced to help make sense of the things that get developed later, and that is something that I appreciate. Now that I have that set up, let me explore what we're getting here with our lead character of Carol. The first thing is that I need to credit is Devino. She's attractive, so that's kind of like a curse onto her because she doesn't really like men, or she's actually afraid of them, something along those lines. So we also see these guys that are pursuing her. There's one of them is like Colin, who's portrayed by John Fraser. And there's also men who are like looking at her and, kind of making advances with their eyes. Now, this character of Colin isn't taking a hint that she's not necessarily interested. Or if she is, he's just coming on too strong. What I like is that she's daydreaming, and this gets set up early on. There could be more to it. There is this family photo when she was younger where everyone is looking at the camera except her. Now, this photo isn't talked about aside from the landlord, and he's portrayed by Patrick Wymark. He asks about it, and she doesn't necessarily answer him. The important thing here is that she is the one who's looking off in the distance, and it could signify that she's always been a dreamer, or maybe there's something more with some of the people in the photo. Now that I bring that up, she has a strong aversion to men, like I've said. She doesn't necessarily reciprocate the affection that Colin is showing. Now, she has disdain for Michael, who is the boyfriend here, portrayed by Hendry, and it could be due to him seeing her sister, who is Helen, portrayed by Yvonne Furneaux. Now, there's one thing is that he's a married man. Another thing is that he is using her glass in the bathroom to hold his toothbrush and razor. There's also this man that she is seeing attacking her each night when her sister is gone. We don't necessarily get an idea who he is, but it could be somebody from her past, or maybe this is just her representation of men. And I think it's showing that she's vulnerable due to being alone in this apartment because her sister is going away for a fortnight vacation with Michael. She sees men as predators, though, and that tracks, though, with what happens with the landlord and to a lesser extent Colin. This could be telling us that she was sexually abused growing up or was assaulted at some point in her life. It could also be that she just believes this is what all men want and are seeking, and she fears it, choosing to isolate herself in the process. Now, something else that adds to this are the visuals. Now, from the opening sequence where they're doing an extreme close-up of Carol's eyes to things that are happening in the apartment, it isn't necessarily over the top. It makes you wonder if things are happening or just inside of her head. She makes a comment about a crack in the wall before Helena leaves, and then we see giant cracks in the wall, and I like how this could be correlating here to her mental stability. That both are cracking. I'll say here the cinematography and framing are good with the editing, the limited effects that are used, but we don't necessarily need them. It is more about the psyche of our lead. The soundtrack is interesting as well. It helps with the atmosphere, but is done with like beatnik jazz, piano tunes, and things to this effect. My only gripe here is that it just runs a bit too long, so it drags late in the second act for me. All that's left then would be the acting. I've already given credit here to Devino. I don't know if her performance is great or Polanski just knew how to film her, but they do great in bringing Carol to life. I like Hendry, Fraser, and Wymark as these men that convey her fears in the opposite sex. Furneaux works as a sister who is grounded. It helps with enhancing that Carol's descended into madness. The acting here is good across the board to push her to where she ends up. So in conclusion, this is an interesting character study of what could happen. Carol's fears are grounded in reality. I like the subtle approach to not give us an information dump, but to kind of just show us images and visuals to help us build to what we think. Devino is good in bringing her character to life. Everyone here pushes her to where she ends up. This is a masterclass in filmmaking, in my opinion. The cinematography, framing, and subtle approach to the effects used. The soundtrack and design also help to enhance the atmosphere. My only gripe is that this runs a bit too long. I'm glad that I revisited this one, as I rather enjoyed what it did. If you can get past what Polanski has done in his personal life, this is one of my favorites from his filmography, just behind probably Rosemary's Baby. So my rating here for Repulsion is going to be an 8.5 out of 10 with this second watch. And then for my second mini review here is going to be Baby Oopsie 3 Burn Baby Burn from 2022. Written and directed by William Butler, stars Libby Higgins, Justina Armistead, and Lee John Woods. This is a comedy horror film that's from the United States. Currently sitting on a 5.3 on IMDb and a 2.9 on Letterboxd, or a synopsis being: witness Sybil's last gasp effort to take down Baby Oopsie's evil cabal of satanic toys while trying to save her friend Ray Ray's soul. So Sybil, once again, being portrayed by Higgins, Ray Ray by Armistead, and then Baby Oopsie is voiced by Jill Bartlett, just to kind of give you that information. But this one I learned about due to IMDb and its connections section. I grew up with the first Dynamic Toys films, and I know in college I saw the spin-off where they face off against the puppets from Puppet Master. It was my tenure at Family Video that I knew they continued with Baby Oopsie, and I learned about this trilogy more recently, heard about it on podcasts, These look like they were getting some decent ratings, and the person over there liked it, so I decided to complete the series and watch this one on Tubi as well. So this one going to be a little bit shorter, as this only runs 46 minutes in length. It feels like the climax of a television show, since this is actually, well, this is the final part of a trilogy. It's rushed. This was, I think, 2 seasons of this show, something like that, and they condensed it all down into 3 movies. To elaborate on what I mean is that we do get a refresher with the characters for this one right before the climax, and this isn't developed much outside of that. This would be great for a final episode of a TV show where everything, built to this moment. Now that I have out there, I don't hate this. I know the opening thoughts that I've kind of given here feels like I'm coming down on it, but I never got bored. The things that I feel like there are some conveniences, though. An example here would be the character of Mitzi, portrayed by Lynn Acton McPherson. She does something to progress the story, and if you haven't watched the previous 2, I'll reveal here that she died in part 1. She's been a ghost for the last 2 movies. Since she's a specter, I am forgiving with something that she does do. It just feels like they didn't know any other way to progress things, and since it was already part of the story, they've already used this character a bit. I did roll my eyes. I do like, though, that we have these trio of dolls that attack people, but it rushes, through all that, and that would be Baby Oopsie, Clowny Frowny, and Cowboy Roy, I think, is the other one. So let's shift over to the lore here. If you don't know about me, I've actually watched Jack Attack ahead of watching this one watching this whole trilogy. I got that one as a screener. I bring that up because it had a final scene that didn't make sense until I watched this trilogy. There's another toy from the original films that was used there, the Jack in the Box. They reference that lore from this one in this. I don't hate this expanded universe where this toy master entity has created possessed toys and they're running amok. And then we just have kind of more mayhem here. I don't know if I can find that person real quick who Harry here plays the character of the Toy Master. Now, like I said, doing more with Clowny Frowny and Cowboy Roy would be fun. I think I'll shift over to discussing the filmmaking. We are watching this for the killer toys. I thought the practical effects were good. I even like the look of the Toy Master. My issues here is with the CGI because it doesn't have the money to make them look good. That took me out of this, unfortunately. The cinematography falls short, whereas does the framing. I like this one setting up and being used the full moon manor here. Other than that, I dig the theme song. It has vibes of the original. The voice work for the dolls is funny and it works. The rest of the music is fine. Let's then finish out with the acting performances. It is amateur but not bad. Higgins is solid as our lead. I do like the continued development of her character, of what they get there. Armistead works as her friend. There is an arc here that I wasn't necessarily expecting. Lee John Woods is solid as this character who was originally ignored with what has happened, and he does his research. He is portraying a priest here, of Father McGavin. He does help set the stage if they continue on with his universe. McPherson is fine as her cameo. I'll also give credit here to Joe Couric, Christopher Joseph Meigs. We also have Tim Dorsey. And then on top of that, I'll also give credit here to Madison Pullins. They all have smaller roles that kind of push things to where things go. Bartlett works as the voice of Baby Oopsie. I thought the rest of the cast kind of rounded this out for what was needed. So in conclusion, this works as a solid end of the trilogy. I don't necessarily think it works on its own. What I mean here is that you really do need to watch the other 2 films, or at least part 2, but with how short both are, it's roughly 1 full feature-length film. This does work better as a miniseries. It is made well enough, though. The practical effects, along with the voice work, cinematography, and framing were solid. Acting is amateur, but it does well in bringing these odd characters to life. Probably my least favorite in the series. That's not to say I hated it, though. The lore that we get introduced is interesting, and it does feel just a little bit too little too late without more movies. So my rating here for Baby Oopsie 3, Burn Baby Burn, is going to be a 5 out of 10 here, and if you wanted to, this is streaming on Tubi. Then I gave a rewatch to A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dream Child. This is from 1989, directed by Stephen Hopkins, written by Leslie Bohm, while also giving credit here to Craig Spector, and then the characters created by Wes Craven. Stars Robert Englund, Lisa Wilcox, and Kelly Jo Minter. This is a body horror, dark comedy, dark fantasy, slasher, supernatural, teen fantasy horror film that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 5.0 on IMDb and a 2.3 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis here being: Alice finds the deadly dreams of Freddy Krueger starting once again. This time the taunting murder is striking somehow while she is still awake. And I'll go ahead and say here that Alice is portrayed by Wilcox, while Freddy Krueger once again by Englund. So this is a film that I saw quite a bit growing up. It seemed to be always on the movie channels, and as a horror fan, I would default if there was something in the genre on with nothing else, available. It has been a good stretch since last time I saw it. When I was younger, I was a big fan, but having expanded my knowledge in viewing, I was intrigued to revisit now that I have the Blu-ray set and watching it in high definition. So what I'm going to start is that this held up better than I remembered. This is still more of a comedy, than I normally would like, but Freddy isn't as scary due to that, so that's not to say this isn't decent. The continuity going from the Dream Master to the Dream Child makes sense. I know that most people who are reading this probably or listening to this, either way, have seen this film, so I'm not going to spoil it, but I will say is how Freddy is pulling people into nightmares is a good touch with the ability that Alice has. I still don't think it's a great film, but it does some good things that I actually appreciate this time around. So with that set up, let's delve into some of the things that are good here. This is a supernatural slasher, so for slasher films, I look for either good characters or kills. If a movie has both, it tends to be ones that I normally enjoy. I thought this did well with the friends that Alice has in this one being distinct. So we do get Dan back, who is portrayed by Danny Hassel. That's good there to bring him back. Now we also have some new friends here of Greta, who is portrayed by Erica Anderson, and then Yvonne, portrayed by Kelly Jo Minter. And then we also have Mark, who is portrayed by Joe Seeley. So that helps as well. Now, Amanda is problematic due to continuity, but I'll come back to that, and that character is Amanda Kruger, portrayed by Beatrice Biopol. I think it might be how you say that name. But I do like her being brought back from part 3. Then we also have Jacob, portrayed by Whit Hertford, who's a good touch for the reveal there, and I'll give credit here since they're all distinct, so that's all you can really ask for in a slasher film. Let's go over to the aspects that I also look for, which are kills. I do think this one is weaker than the other installments. There is one with a motorcycle that was used to make me cringe as a child. I do like that. This one also gets back to making the deaths look like accidents, which in turn makes Alice look crazy. I'll then pull in the effects here and say that they did go practical. I appreciated that. They could be amped up a bit more, but since this leans more into comedy, I get it. I still like using lines that were said or aspects of the characters into the death, so that, give credit for that. Then the cinematography and framing also help here to hide the seams. So there's one last aspect here that I've been tiptoeing around, and there's going to be a reveal that I'm just going to go ahead and do. So spoilers if you've not seen this one, and if you can tell from the subtitles that Alice is pregnant. What I like here is that I didn't know this. If you didn't know this reveal, you could see it as Freddy being the dream child, especially with something earlier in the movie. Then we learn about Alice and how it clicks even more, and then, that will be the extent of the spoilers, but I do like this idea. How it raises the stakes for her and her friends. Like I said earlier, there's a good progression here to help diminish the Dream Master powers as well. It's kind of tough when you have somebody who has that type of ability, especially when she's taking stuff from her friends who have died. It also creates a subplot with Dan's parents bringing in Alice's mental state. There's an interesting message here with being like a young parent, as well as how we perceive mental illness. It can be weaponized, which is an interesting idea to explore. I think I need to go over to the gripes that I have. I've already said that I don't love that this is more comedy, so it diminishes Freddy as being scary. His look isn't as good, but I know at this point he didn't want to be in makeup as long. I don't fault him there either. Issues I have is that this violates the continuity from part 3 in regards to Amanda. We saw her as an old woman. Now, this states that she committed suicide or something along those lines that might have happened. If I missed something, that she lived to old age in this asylum and then did it, but it seems like it happened earlier. Either way, it's showing her as a young woman here instead of this older lady, which makes it confusing. So like I said, I might have missed something, so if that's the case, that's on me. Let me then finish out with discussing acting performances. England is able to show even more personality here. I won't fault his performance, as I think my gripe is more with the writing for that. Wilcox is good to develop even more for that Alice character. Anderson, Minter, Seeley, and Hassel are all good as her friend group. What is interesting here is that they don't fully fit as a friends, but I can let that slide. I almost get the idea that Greta, Yvonne, and Mark weren't in the picture, so I could see all of them growing up together, and then Alice and Dan joining the group after what happened in part 4. I do love the idea here of Dennis, portrayed by Nicholas Mealy, who is Alice's dad. That's an underrated aspect there, because he's an alcoholic in the previous movie, and we see that he's cleaned himself up, especially after what happened to Alice's brother. Other than that, I do like the subplots with Dan's parents, who are Valerie Armstrong and Burr D. Benning. They, along with the rest of the cast, were solid for what was needed. So in conclusion, I do think this is a step back from the previous installment and falls short of the highs. That's not to say this is bad. What is fun here is this with comedic Freddy. England is still great there. The kills are still interesting, and I like how it correlates to the mental state of Alice. I will say that the acting is solid across the board, with credit to Wilcox and her development of the role. This is still made well enough with the practical effects, cinematography, and framing leading the way. This would be pivoted back. If this would have pivoted back to being darker, it would work better for me. Still a fan, as I think this is a fun one. If you're working through the series, it's just not one that's a go-to for me anymore. So my rating here for A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dream Child, is going to be a 7 out of 10. Probably a little bit higher than most people, but like I said, there's some things that just work for me here. And the last feature that I'm going to be covering here is going to be Lips of Blood. It goes by the original title of Le Verse de Sangue. This is from 1975, directed by Jean Roland, who also co-wrote this with Jean-Loup Philippe, who also starred in this with Annie Bell and Natalie Perry. This is a horror thriller film that is from France, currently sitting on a 5.9 on IMDb and a 3.3 on Letterboxd. Synopsis is: Frederic sees a photograph of a ruined seaside castle, which triggers a strange childhood memory. He then goes on a strange quest, aided by 4 female vampires, to find the castle and the beautiful woman who lives there. So this is one that I first believe I heard about through podcasts. It was up next on the list of recommendations to check out. I also believe that this was at least brought up on the documentary about the co-writer and director here of Roland, and that would be the orchestrator of storms. I found this quite interesting, even though this is the first of his works that I've now seen. That did slightly prepare me for what we'd get here, but this also doubles as a voyage to the Fry's watch without even necessarily meaning to. So I'll start is that this is a haunting atmosphere. It has an eerie start. Then we have Frederic, who is portrayed by Felipe, who becomes obsessed with finding these ruins in this picture that he saw at a party. He doesn't remember much of his childhood after his father passed away, but his mother is portrayed by Perry, and she's at this opening party, and she tries to calm him, stating that she's never seen this castle in the image, hoping that he'll give it up. There is more to what is going on here as we get revealed. Now that I have that set up, I did want to give a disclaimer. I know this is 50 plus years old at the time of writing my review. I'm not going to spoil it. The story is basic, and I should say that it gets right into Frederic seeing these images and needing to figure out why they look familiar. I did like this flashback to fill that in. We learn that they really just want to see if Jennifer, who is portrayed by Belle, is still around this castle where we met her. There's an interesting reveal here and explanations of different things. I will say that the plot conveniences that we get those, and it is straightforward. This is to the point where I wasn't shocked by any of the reveals. It doesn't necessarily need them, though, either. I then want to discuss the vampires in this. You get the feeling from the flashback that Jennifer is one. There's a backstory that gets revealed later, and it doesn't fully line up. That's not to say that it isn't true. It just isn't young Frederic's experience. He fell in love with her during this encounter, and now that he remembers, he just can't let it go. There's then this group of vampires that come out of the tomb in the city. I like the explanation there as to why they don't appear until Frederic comes into this room. They're all attractive, and having one with like a sheer outfit that is see-through. So we get limited lore, but the story is more with Frederic trying to find this location. There's one last thing I wanted to bring up here is that Roland would go on to do a decent amount of porn. He is able to frame shots and to make them sensual. There are a few scenes that we get here. They don't fully work outside of I could see getting people into the seats with those. I'll just then discuss like the filmmaking here, so I'll shift slightly. He knows how to craft shots. The cinematography and framing are good. Gives a vibe of a dreamlike bordering on the surreal. I appreciated that. There are limited effects. Vampires look good though. There's limited blood, but it has a good color. The soundtrack also adds to the atmosphere, so credit for that. All it's out there to be acting performances. Philippe's a bit wooden. The only thing there is that he's obsessed with finding this location, so I get how that is. He's not bad, but I just wanted a little bit more from the lead. Belle here works even though she's also wooden. The truth behind that character makes sense for that one. Perry works as his overbearing mother for Frederic. Then we also here have Catherine Castile, Marie Pierre Castile, Helena Mangin, and Anita Berglund, and they are the other vampires you get, though, that trio, or that grouping of four. And I'll say the rest of the cast work to push Frederic to where he ends up. There's a lot of nudity here, so that's most of the women, so if that's something to help sway you, then just know that. In conclusion, this is a film that pulled me in early, and I enjoyed the atmosphere. It's an art house vampire film from the 1970s that pulls in elements of softcore porn. Not much of the latter, but we just kind of get nudity in a quick scene of a woman pleasuring herself. We also have some interesting tale of obsession. This is made well with the cinematography, soundtrack, FX, leading the way there. The biggest drawback would be it loses steam and the acting performances are a bit wooden. I still enjoyed my time. Am curious now to delve into more of Roland's filmography. So my rating here for Lips of Blood going to be a 7 out of 10. And the next up here I have a documentary of Boggy Creek Monster. This is from 2016, written and directed by Seth Breedlove, and this is hosted by Lyle Blackburn. So this is a documentary about, of course, a Sasquatch that is from the United States, currently sitting on a 5.8 on IMDb, and not enough ratings on Letterboxd, but I'd say about a 3-star over there, with the synopsis being the true story behind the legend of the Fouke Monster. I think that's how you say that. So another documentary that I sought out while I've seen others about cryptids from Breedlove and his production team of Small Town Monsters. Title caught my interest as I remember watching The Legend of Boggy Creek with my mother, who she said she was terrified by this growing up. So this was streaming on Tubi, so that made it easy to watch. So let me preface here that this isn't the most in-depth look at the Fouke Monster. This would make a good companion piece, though, for the movie, as Lyle Blackburn, who wrote a book on the subject and is the host for this documentary, goes around interviewing people who are still around from the area. They also talk to local experts and walk around the areas from the movie. I'll also say here that I don't believe there is a Sasquatch out there. It is possible, and I can't prove anything, so I do think that if there was, there'd be more evidence. That's not to say that there aren't people that didn't experience something they cannot explain, but this is an entertaining documentary. It runs about 75 minutes, so it made it well enough with the cinematography and framing. Like I said, I'd recommend this to fans who it would make a great special feature for The Legend of Boggy Creek as a companion piece, just because we're kind of getting more of the real story here as, they kind of do the same thing there with playing everything out. So my rating here for Boggy Creek Monster, which is streaming on Tubi if you are curious, is going to be a 6 out of 10. So then I'm going to run through here is that I got to watch 3 episodes of Agatha All Along. This is what I'll be doing for a TV show here until I finish this one out. And so the 3 episodes I watched are Seekest Thou the Road, that's episode 1. Then episode 2 is Circle Sown with Fate, Unlock Thy Hidden Gate. And then episode 3 was Through Many Miles of Tricks and Trials. So the first episode is in a small town, Westview. Detective Agnes's murder case sends her down a road that changes everything. And then the next episode is with old foes in hot pursuit, Agatha and Teen gather a desperate coven to walk the witch's road, and the coven sets down the road, and many perils are quickly revealed, including the first trial. So this is one, as I was saying, not straight horror, but definitely has kind of some elements here. This isn't technically, like I was saying, but being more of like a dark fantasy with comedy and sci-fi elements. Since we have witches and using power, I'm going to include it. So this is an interesting spin-off from WandaVision. It is in the vein of a television show, but less of a sitcom and starting more as like a police procedural. Agnes O'Connor, who's portrayed by Catherine Hahn, is a detective who goes to a crime scene. It bothers her, but she holds it together. She looks into the case, and this brings her to meet Rio Vidal, portrayed by Aubrey Plaza. Now, these two are in Agnes's home when a burglar breaks in. She catches them, and they're credited as Teen, portrayed by Joe Locke. Now, Agnes interrogates him, and this facade is broken. There seemed to be a magical spell, and if I'm understanding correctly, this was done by the Scarlet Witch that held Agnes in this type of world. She's now Agatha Harkness again. So this leads into seeking out Lila Calderu, portrayed by Patty Lupon, who reads fortunes. Agatha wants to walk the witch's road to get her power back. Now she has to form a coven. This leads her to seek the aid of Jennifer Kale, portrayed by Shashir Zamata, Alice Wu Gulliver, portrayed by Ali An, and then her neighbor from WandaVision, Mrs. Hart, portrayed by Deborah Jo Rump. Now they walk the road and survive. They'll be blessed with the strongest form of their powers. This also seems to be some dark entities that are with her and everything and following after her, Now the group then comes to the witch's road. They go into a house by the water and head inside for their first trial. Something to include here is that the coven asks Teen who he is, and they realize there's a spell hiding his identity, and he can't say the stuff, so like anything about his past gets blurred. So Agatha has a dark secret that could correlate back to him, but that's still open to opinion. I'll say here that this comedy is ramped up. Han is just, going to town, which is fun. This show has me intrigued. Something that happened in season 3, or episode 3, went darker than I was expecting, and not all characters are safe. So my rating here, episode 1, I gave a 7 out of 10. Episode 2, I gave a 7.5 out of 10. And then the last episode here that I've watched of so far, 3, I gave a 7 out of 10 as well. So that's all I'm going to do here then for mini reviews. Let me get you over to the trailer of my first featured review.
Yeah, this is Peter Lorre speaking.
I couldn't resist the temptation to call you. I just read of your new picture that you're to make.
Oh, that's very nice of you. Thanks for your interest.
Oh, I thought you were magnificent in M.
And just the other night I saw your new picture, The Man Who Knew Too Much.
What character are you going to play in?
Oh, it's the most unusual story. It's a great love drama. I am to be a half-mad scientist. I, a poor peasant, have conquered science. Why can't I conquer love? He shall be shut up when it's I who am mad. But nobody knows that. Yes. Each man kills the thing he loves.
And for my first featured review here is going to be Mad Love from 1935, directed by Karl Freund. Now, this was written by... Now, I actually remember listening to this on the audio commentary, so there's going to be a little bit going on here where the novel was written by Maurice Renaud, which is La Main de Orlac, which is The Hands of Orlac. Now, there's a translation and adaptation novel of Florence Crewe Jones. The adaptation was done by Guy Endor. Now, the screenplay was written by P.J. Wolfson and John L. Balderston. Now, there was a little bit of a rewrite there from somebody, but then we also have some uncredited dialogue and writing help from Leon Gordon, Edgar Allan Wolfe, Gladys von Ettenhaus, and Leon Wolfson also helped out there. And then this is starring Peter Lorre, Francis Drake, and Colin Clive, while also having the likes here of Ted Healy, Sarah Hayden, Edward Brophy, Henry Colker, Key Luke, May Beatty, George Davis, Billy Dooley, Harold Huber, Isabel Jewell, Leo White, Sam Ash, Hooper Octley, Agostino Borganto, and Maurice Beery. Now, this is a body horror romance sci-fi film that is from the United States, currently sitting on a 7.2 on IMDb and a 3.6 on Letterboxd for a synopsis. In Paris, a demented surgeon's obsession with a British actress leads him to secretly replace her concert pianist husband's mangled hands with those of a guillotine murder with a gift for knife throwing. So this was an interesting film that I had learned about. I saw The Beast with Five Fingers, which is a variation on the source material. Now, last year I watched The Hands of Orlac, which is closer to the book. That was the inspiration. I believe that I learned about this film through special features on that disc as well, but this is one that was been on my radar for a while now. Finally getting around to seeing it for my Voyage Through the Fives here for 1935, and it's also, I was watching it here the second time with the auto commentary on this, on the screenwriter and the historian, because I do have a double feature with, I believe, like Devil Doll or something along those lines. So before I do some featured notes, let me actually read the blurb that is in the Horror Show Guide Encyclopedia, which is where I also learned about this film. Yvonne Orlac, portrayed by Drake, is a reigning scream queen on the Parisian Grand Guignol stage. Now, the ominous Dr. Gogol, portrayed by Laurie in perhaps his most impressive and commanding role after M, is her biggest fan, and devotion is indeed mad love. Through the oft-filmed plot involves Gongol's transplanting hands onto her concert pianist husband, Stephen, portrayed by Clive. The film belongs to Laurie. The main flaw is the comic relief of the period. The black and white photography is superb, and some of the sets are impressive. But nothing on screen tops Laurie's eggshell-smooth bald head dome, the makeup he wears toward the ends as well. There's an iconic scene that I'll kind of reference here in a little bit. But then now that I've done that, let me do some featured notes here, and I'll start with our director of Freund, who I've now seen 2 of his 7 features. I believe he was brought up for The Mummy, so I'm at 28% total. Both are in horror, his only 2 in the genre, so 100% there. Now, there's an assistant director of Dolph Zimmer, who has 29 motion pictures and 2 shorts. First of his that I've seen, only one he did in horror. Now, I have a trio of writers that I'm going to be doing here, and the first one's going to be Florence Crewe Jones, only credit they have. Then there's Wolfson. They have 24, and this is the first that I've seen, only one in horror. Then last is going to be Balderston, who wrote 21 films. I've seen 4. He's credited for The Last of the Mohicans from 1992. I'm assuming he did some sort of adaptation, and that's why he's getting credit. But he has 5 in horror. I've seen 3, Bride of Frankenstein, The Mummy, and this. I have not seen Mark of the Vampire yet, and then The Man Who Lived Again. Now, the original writer of the novel is Renaud, and I've seen 2 of their 6 adaptations. 5 are in horror, with all of them being the same story except the very last one. I've seen this and Hands of Orlac from 24. I have not seen Hands of a Stranger, The Hands of Orlac from 1960, or Dr. Lorne, Subgod. So then, now to the cast. I'll start with Laurie, as somebody I brought it before. I've seen 13 of his 106 films for 12%. Also had 7 shorts. He was in 12 in horror. I've seen 8 for 66%. I haven't seen The Raven or Tales of Terror. He's also has a doc that he's featured in with Heroes of Horror and Terror of the Pharaoh's Tomb. The next is Drake. She's been in 24 films. I've seen 2, both in horror. This and The Invisible Ray are the only 2 that she's done in genre. Then last is going to be Clive. He has 24 features and 1 short. I've seen him in 5 things, all in genre. This would be Frankenstein, the sequel, Bride, and then The Ghost as well, that other sequel, Ghost of Frankenstein, that is. Now, he also has a couple docs that he's been featured in. I've seen one in Monster Madness, and there's also a cinema scrapbook that I haven't. And I've also kind of learned watching the special features and stuff that he actually died pretty young due to some complications due to alcoholism, which is kind of a bummer. So then, let's jump in this movie here. And we started the theater that I was talking about in that recap that does more like horror-style plays with the Grand Guignol. Now, the star here is Yvonne, and we see her backstage with her maid of Marie, portrayed by Hayden. Now, they're listening to the radio where somebody's playing the piano. This turns out to be Yvonne's husband, Stephen, portrayed by Clive. He's a famous pianist. Now, to signal that he loves his wife, he always coughs twice in between sets. Now, Yvonne has another admirer, though, in Dr. Gogol. Now, he's a famous doctor in the area, and I get the idea that he no longer practices for money. He takes on difficult cases that are a challenge. Now, he comes to the theater for every performance buying the same box. After the show, he goes backstage to see her. She is flattered, but then reveals that she's married. This devastates the doctor. He does steal a kiss celebrating her final show. Now, she's heading to see Stephen, and they're going to go to London and start a new life. Tragedy strikes when the train crashes. Now, his hands are maimed, and the doctors initially diagnose that he'll never be able to play again. Yvonne goes to Dr. Gogol and begs him to help. An odd thing that happens here ahead of this is that he bought a wax figure of her that was said to be destroyed. Dr. Gogol examines Stephen's hands, coming to the same conclusion. He does have another idea, though. Dr. Gogol attended the execution of Rollo, portrayed by Brophy. He reaches out to Prefect Rosette, portrayed by Kolker, wanting to know if he can take the deceased body for experiments. He is given clearance. The doctor then takes the hands and places them on Stephen. This is successful, but it will require extensive therapy to get these hands working back towards normalcy. Stephen notices that his hands don't look the same, to which Dr. Gogol assures him this is due to how badly damaged they were. Stephen wonders, though, especially with a new skill that he has with throwing knives or similar objects. He also descends into madness due to this as well, not being able to play like he used to, and the bills are stacking up. So that's really my recap and introduction of the characters. What I want to start is that this is an interesting remake of The Hands of Lord Locke and reimagining of the source material on the film. This is focusing more on the doctor who does the transplant, making him obsessed villain towards Yvonne. It focuses less on Stephen's descent into madness, but I also think that it's an interesting approach to this character and the explanation of what they're going for with everything. So now that that's set up, let me delve deeper. I did want to start with our villain here, who is Dr. Gogol, we've seen the story play out in the era. It's toxic masculinity with him being obsessed with Yvonne. Something of note is that it's hard to comprehend in this world without the internet. He had no idea that she was married. It is wild to remember back at that time that you wouldn't know or you couldn't even find about celebrities' personal lives. Dr. Gogol has spent all of his money seeing Yvonne perform, and now he's devastated to learn that it's all for nothing. This is how he sees it, at least. Laurie does a great job at being stoic, where you can still feel that rage. So I did want to shift slightly to this commentary and go over to this madness that stems from it. Before he asks to help, he takes home a wax figure of Yvonne. He has his maid upkeep this statue, and he is then asked to help. This is something that he does, hoping that it will result in her falling for him, especially since Stephen will no longer be able to play the piano the same. Even after the surgery, he takes his obsession farther, making it one of the great scenes from this film. It is misguided that he is helping, but that feels real. Something else I find interesting with this version of the story is the fact that we're not following the psyche of Stephen as much. He doesn't feel like his hands are his anymore, that's true. There's a good reason, and we know, by the end of the first act. I have not read the book, so my understanding from the special features on The Hands of Orlok is that he is dealing with this doubt from the accident. He manifests in believing that his hands are doing these things that he's not controlling. This version, though, is leaning into the supernatural because he has these hands of a killer. He's able to throw knives like Rollo could. I found going this route curious. I do appreciate doing a different take. It doesn't make as much sense, but we'll still credit that even if I don't like it as much. Let's then discuss the acting performance. I've already said how good Laurie's performance was. His look also helps, having been completely bald head. Drake works as the object of his obsession. What I like here is that she's trying to tread lightly. She doesn't want to upset him and tries to let him down easy. Something intriguing here is that Clive takes a back seat. Yvonne tries to help him, and it causes his depression about his situation. Stephen is more of a catalyst. The rest of the cast do push these characters where they end up. This would be like Hayden, Brophy, and Kolker, and the rest of the cast are solid, kind of in support for what was needed. All itself, that would be filmmaking. I'd say here this is made well enough. We are early into cinema, so the cinematography and framing were solid. There are images that stood out to me, whether it was focusing on Stephen's new hands, Yvonne and Marie talking to the radio, or the great reveal of Rollo. Then we go along with that. The effects that we get here are limited, but it also doesn't necessarily need them. This is more about the psyche of Stephen and Dr. Gogol. Other than that, the sound design worked in conjunction, and the music fit without necessarily standing out. So now I'm going to shift over to doing a little bit of the trivia here. There's a lot. Charles Chaplin called Laurie the best on-screen actor that he's ever seen from his performance in this. You may recognize the voice of Brophy, who plays the convicted killer Rollo. In addition to supporting roles and character parts in a bunch of well-known films, he also was the voice of Timothy the circus mouse who befriended and mentored the flying baby elephant in Walt Disney's Dumbo. This film was directed by one of the all-time great German cinematographies, Freund. One of his directors of photography on this film was one of the America's all-time great cinematographers, Greg Toland. Laurie was under contract at Columbia, and he agreed to be loaned out to MGM for this film if Columbia would do a version of Crime and Punishment with him in the role of Raskolnik, something like that. Laurie's first American film, the last directorial effort of famed cinematographer Freund. The line, "Each man kills the thing he loves," is from Oscar Wilde's poem, The Ballad of Reading Gaol. Now, the original one-sheet proclaimed the suitable only for adults. Of course, this was not enforced and served as a boost to the box office. The Hayes office cautioned the studio about showing scenes of the dead, injured, or dying from the train wreck. Some countries banned this altogether, while others cut the scenes of torture, guillotine, and strangulation. After this initial release, 15 minutes were cut from the film, including the pre-credit warning to the audience and the surgery to obtain Rollo's hands. Ian Wolfe, who played Stephen Orlock's stepfather Henry, was 38 during filming, only 4 years older than Clive, 34, who played his stepson. The original titles were contained to a spoken warning in the matter of, kind of like you get with Frankenstein. Beatty's declaration about the wax figure, "It went for a little walk," is a clear echo to the similar line from The Mummy that was written by Balderston and directed by Freund. The close-ups of the wax statue are actually Drake in makeup. Because cinematographer Toland later worked on Citizen Kane, film critic Pauline Cole postulated this film influenced that later masterpiece. The first 2 lines of poetry that were done are from Elizabeth Barrett Browning's sonnets from the Portuguese number 7, "The Face of All the World Has Changed, I think, since first I heard the footsteps of the soul." Other titles that were considered were The Mad Doctor of Paris and The Hands of Orlock, of course. Dr. Gogol is chauffeured in a 31 Pierce Arrow Model 41 limousine. This film has a 100% rating based on 12 critic reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. A torn poster of this with the Spanish translations Las Manos de Orlock appears in Malcolm Lowry's Under the Volcano as a symbol to the intricate novel plot that subsumes its dissonance between the mind and the body as its anti-hero protagonist. Just before Brophy meets his death, he references the Hoover Dam Project. Easily recognized actors are supposed to be in this movie according to the studio records and or casting call list, which are like Harold Huber, Isabel Jewell, George Davis, Billy Dooley, and Leo White. However, they're not seen. The cake at Yvonne's farewell party is topped with a guillotine bordered with skeletons and inscribed "Bon Voyage, Yvonne, le théâtre perd une autre tête." The later sentence in English is "The theater loses another head." The scene where Gogol first sits at the organ with Yvonne's face reflected in the mirror might have been helped inspire a scene in The Avengers from 98 where Sir Sean Connery's Sir August de Winter plays an ornate pipe organ and the painting of Emma Peel is visible. This film has a B rating by the National Legion of Decency, morally objectable in part or for all. Now, the original script has a little girl that was in surgery here. Something bad happens to her. In the early German silent version, Rollo is actually innocent. This may have been true of this version as well. Dr. Gogol's last lines change the hair color in, but the quote from Robert Browning's poem, Porphyria's Lover, which reads, "I found a little thing to do and all the hair in one long yellow string. I wound thee 3 times, her little throat around, and strangled her." So then, I did watch a commentary, as I was saying, that guy, I can't remember, I didn't write down his name, so I'm not sure what it was, but he has a wealth of knowledge. He gave such interesting insight to Laurie, Clive, and Drake's personal life and career. There does sound to be some scenes that might have been, that were cut out to help ramp up the darkness. That was something I wish I could see. My guess is the footage was destroyed, but that commentary made me appreciate this film even more. So then in conclusion, this is an interesting take on the source material. Now, my only knowledge there would be seeing the adaptation and watching special features. What works here is the acting. Laurie is great with Drake and the rest of the cast kind of pushing the characters right up. This is well made. They are limited by the technology available, but what they could do, he captured some great shots. Credit to the cinematography and framing with the sound design and effects added to it. I rather enjoyed this one. I'm excited that I did revisit this with the auto commentary as well. So my rating here for Mad Love, 7.5 out of 10. Not going to do a spoiler section. Don't necessarily need to do anything additional there. So let me go ahead and get you over to the trailer of my second featured review.
The Gorge trailer starts now.
I have new orders that require me to go dark for at least a year, maybe more. A special assignment in an undisclosed location.
As an elite sniper, are you presently under any private or military contract?
No, there's not a lot of reasons for me right now.
What if I gave you a reason?
There she is. West Tower Observation Post. Your home for the next 365 days. There is no outside communication here. What's that on the other side? That is East Tower. Contact with the other side is strictly forbidden.
So what's the mission? To keep people from going in the gorge?
No. You need to stop what's in the gorge from coming out.
What the hell is that?
The gorge is the door to hell. And we're standing guard at the gate.
Truth about this place? What's the truth about the gorge?
This place is evil.
And for my second featured review is going to be The Gorge from 2025. This is directed by Scott Derrickson, written by Zach Dean, stars Miles Teller, Anya Taylor-Joy, and Sigourney Weaver, while also featuring the likes here of Sophie Dirisu, William Houston, Kobna Holbrook-Smith, James Marlowe, Julianne Kurakawa, Ruta Jedmintis, Oliver Trevnia, Sachin Bhatt, Samantha Coughlin, Alessandro Garcia, Greta Hansen, Oliver Mason, Adam Scott Rowley, and Joseph Talos. Now, this is a dark romance, monster survival action adventure horror romance sci-fi film that is from a co-production here of the United Kingdom and United States. Currently sitting on a 6.7 on IMDb and a 2.9 on Letterboxd. Synopsis is: two highly trained operatives become close after being sent to protect opposite sides of a mysterious gorge. When an evil emerges, they must work together to survive what lies within. So it's a film that I learned about earlier here in 2025. It's on Apple TV, and I was leery about signing up for this service due to not having enough things to check out there. I also didn't realize that this was horror until figuring out ones that were on the streaming service. So as I'm unable to currently go to the theater, seeing that this featured Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy made me make this a featured review here on the podcast. So then let's start with doing some featured notes, and I'll start with saying that let me start with our director here, since that is the most logical place to go, and it's Derrickson. He's one of my most seen directors, tied for 33rd with nine films. He has 11 total, 3 shorts. Everything that I've seen is out of the genre, has been Black Phone, Sinister, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, and this. I have not seen Black Phone 2, which isn't released yet. We have 2 assistant directors. First is going to be Colin Smith. She has 2 credits, both in horror, with this and Maxine. The other is Cliff Lanning, who has done 54 movies in 1 short. I've seen 18. It was not in horror that I've seen with like Batman Begins, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, as well as Life of Pi. In horror, he has 5. I've seen all of them now. It would be Meg 2, Hellboy 2, The Reaping, Frankenstein from 1992, and now this. Now, there are 2 additional directors. First is going to be Jeff Haberston. He has 11 films, and I've seen 7. Not horror, he did Doctor Strange 1 and 2, as well as Captain Marvel. 2 that he's done in horror are going to be AVP, Alien vs. Predator Requiem, and now this. Now, the other is Maggie Levin. She has 3, all in horror with this, Black Phone, and the upcoming sequel there. Then our writer, he has written 7 works. Not horror, he did Deadfall. This is the only horror film. Now moving over to the cast, Miles Teller has been in 31 motion pictures and 6 shorts. I've seen him in 7 things. Not horror was Whiplash, Top Gun Maverick, and Project X. This is the only one he's done in genre so far. Now his co-star is Taylor-Joy, who mirrors Teller here with 31 features and 6 shorts. Not horror, she was in the Super Mario Brothers movie where she lended her voice, The Northman, and Glass. In horror, she has 7. I've seen 6. This would be The Menu, this movie here, The Witch, and Split. I have not seen Morgan. Now, last is going to be Weaver, who has 115 films and 13 shorts. Not horror, I've seen Wall-E, Avatar, and Finding Dory, where all of those she adds her voice, except Avatar, obviously. In horror, she has 11. I've seen 5. This would be Alien, Aliens, and Cabin in the Woods. I have not seen Copycat, Vamps, or I've seen most of Snow White, A Tale of Terror. I've not seen it all the way through, though, so that's why it is, fallen in that little section there. All right, then, for this movie here, we start with seeing Drassa, portrayed by Taylor-Joy, in a bunker of sorts. Now, she has ways of keeping track of the days, and it's crazy is that it is completely isolated. When she looks outside, it's sunny out, but we can't tell from inside where she is. What we learn is that she's an assassin. She kills a man who is getting off a private jet. Now, the film then jumps to introduce us to Levi, portrayed by Teller. We learn about him as he meets with Bartholomew, who is portrayed by Weaver. Now, he is a rare talent as a sniper, but was discharged from the Marines due to his mental state. He does freelance work for them now. The job that he's going to be interviewing for is a 1-year stint and highly classified. It then jumps back over to Drassa, who is going to report to Moscow for a similar position, but she meets with her father, and this is in Lithuania, and we learn that he's sick. He is quite sad, and she is as well when she learns what his plan is going to be this upcoming February. She won't be around for it, and it might be a good thing for her. Now that we shift over to this mysterious gorge from the synopsis. Levi gets a lay of the land from the man who he's replacing of JD, portrayed by Deersu. Now, this side is maintained by the allies of World War II. Now, the other side is done by the countries that replaced the Soviet Union. There's no contact. Once a month, he has a check-in via radio, so that's the only contact he has there. You're supposed to do a perimeter check of the gorge. If anything emerges from it, kill with prejudice. There is an automatic guns that will help that are kind of a little bit more spaced out, as he's just kind of worrying about the center where it seems to be the most action happens. Now, Levi finds this odd, but agrees to these terms, and he settles in for his shift. Not everything as it seemed, though, when JD leaves. Drassa is on the other side, and around her birthday, she breaks the rules. They share messages via writing and binoculars on, whiteboards or, paper. They play chess and do other things to pass the time. That is until something comes out of the gorge. They work together to kill it, but the creatures look human. JD told Levi the history, and that was relayed to him. Levi finds a way across the gorge to meet Drassa in person. They also end up fighting for their lives as catastrophe strikes, and they have to try to get back, or he has to try to get back across before it is too late. And not only that, but they might have to do some things in the gorge itself. So let's leave my recap and introduction of the characters. What I want to start is that this does some interesting things. Not necessarily the most original, but it still is intriguing to me for sure. It is far-fetched. I will say that because we have the United States and Soviet Union working together in this experiment and keeping it a secret. Now, this could have been started before they became enemies in World War II. I don't even know about the time frame there, but it was soon after. There is more to it, though. Now, since it's revealed that the presidents of all the nations involved don't even know, that is something that makes this company that is in charge of Black Lake they're the ones that are in charge of doing this. It's on a need-to-know basis, and it excludes the heads of state. There's some good reasons there, and the reveal of the research they're doing makes it slightly problematic, as it does kind of fall into those conspiracy things like New World Order or Illuminati stuff. Now, taking out the realism there, I do love the idea. It is similar to Berlin and Germany after World War II, where this gorge is split between the Allies and the former Soviet bloc countries. Now, for 1 year, each side picks a person to monitor that side. They don't want the people that are assigned to communicate, and there's a good reason there. Sharing information would make more questions to be asked and, not necessarily enforce answers to be, given. This aspect of the story isn't necessarily horror, but it falls in line with espionage or world conspiracy films. I do enjoy that. Now, I will then go light here to avoid spoilers, but let me delve into the horror. This comes from what is living in the gorge. They are humanoid, they can climb up and try to escape, but there are weapons like mines, automatic guns, and then the people that get assigned are highly trained soldiers. This aspect of the film reminded me a little bit of combining Cold Skin with something like Annihilation. There are things told to Levi when he arrives that come back into play later. I won't go as far to say that it's great writing, but I'm glad it is referenced. The truth of the monsters and seeing more of the world as our two characters go into the gorge is good. I guessed it, and I appreciated it still well enough. So there's a gripe I have here, and I'm going to do this with discussing the action performances. For the positives, I'll start with Teller and Taylor-Joy. They're both good. They have good chemistry, which helps. My problem is that they intentionally use two good-looking people of the opposite sex to build romance. That felt cheesy. Doesn't ruin it though either. This is a two-person show for the majority. I do like Weaver in her smaller role. Deerasu and the rest of the cast were kind of needed. The monsters, seem to have human counterparts to bring them to life, which is fine. What I mean there is that they probably have people that are acting out these roles and then just using CGI to make them how they are. So also for this filmmaking, this is well made. We get some cool shots of where these two are living. Now the gorge from above looks cool. It is filled with Mr. Fog. We learn what that is later, which worked for me. We have two characters that go down into the gorge. I like that. I'm sure CGI was used there, but it worked. I'll discuss the effects overall. This is heavy there. They did have some money behind it, so it looks well enough. I do wish they went practical more as a personal thing. They did do some good things here. Again, correlates back to the things that were said. This is an action movie first, so those sequences work. Other than that, the soundtrack kind of just fit for what was needed. So then let's jump over here to talking about some of the trivia that I was bringing up. And the bottom of the gorge, as well as some of the creatures, are visually heavily inspired by the work of Polish painter Zdzisław Beksiński. In the Christmas montage scene, they play chess, referencing Taylor-Joy's breakout role in The Queen's Gambit. And then they play drums, referencing Teller's breakout in Whiplash. However, this was in the script before these two were cast, and the two of them wanted the scene removed. Director Derrickson refused. Lithuanian word drasa means courage, though it's not a name, not at least knowingly given. In a brief background shot, the iconic flame towers of Baku, Azerbaijan can be seen. Though the movie does not explicitly mention Baku, CGI was used to incorporate the towers into the cityscape, giving the scene a futuristic or exotic feel. The song played by Ericas in the cemetery is Bach's Cello Suite No. 1 in G minor prelude. Third time, Sigourney Weaver played a mysterious high-ranking figure in charge of covering up supernatural phenomena after playing the big guy in Paul and the director in Cabin in the Woods. Besides Lithuanian language spoken by Drasa, there are other Lithuanian hints connected with the movie. Seen in a cemetery, Drasa drinks Lithuanian beer Sevistui, meaning lighthouse or light tower, hence the movie location mostly taking place. Seen in a cemetery, mention location Pervlaka means a dry place in between two water roads where you drag your boat. For example, Levi was crossing a gorge in the same manner. Lithuanian happy song mostly contains long live wishes, which is ironic in such a situation as Drasa finds herself. Filming is taking place in Teesdale, County Durham during May 2023, which would include Low Force, where 1917 was also filmed. When Levi completes his first radio check after 30 days, the date is October 20th of 2024. Since the radio check is complete every 30 days, that means they arrived at the gorge for their rotations on the 20th of September in 2024. Miles Teller and Taylor-Joy both appeared in a Fox Marvel movie. Miles played Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic in the Fantastic Four, where Taylor-Joy played Magic in the New Mutants. I'm not going to go ahead and do there's some other things here that might be some spoilers, so I'm going to avoid doing that and just kind of say here in conclusion, I enjoyed my time with this movie. This is an action romance film that has horror in it. There are people here who will have issues with not enough, but the atmosphere there and the sequences where it goes, I don't love what they do with the romantic angle. It is fine, but the acting from Teller and Taylor-Joy were good. The rest of the cast were on the top for what was needed to push them where they end up. This is made well enough with it. The action sequences are solid. The creatures look cool, and the explanation was something, I guess, but doesn't ruin this. More practical effects would help. CGI is needed, though, to bring this to life, so I get it. Not great, but it's a solid popcorn action horror film in the style of like a later Resident Evil film. So my rating here for The Gorge is going to be a 6.5 out of 10. Not going to do a spoiler section here, so let me go ahead and get you over to one last break before I close out the show.
Dave.
Liam.
It's a trailer.
Watch It If You Can podcast. Join us for each episode as we create box sets of our favourite films and TV shows.
We go through the cast to see what else they've been in, along with any recommendations.
We pick our favourite characters, performances, moments and highlights from the soundtrack too.
We ask if there's anything to make it better and look at the lasting legacy of our pick.
We have a little fun with our quickfire round, and finally, what else would you like list based on themes from the episode.
Maybe, just maybe, you should watch it if you can.
What if you've already seen it?
Well, you can watch it again, if you can.
And welcome back one last time here, and just to kind of go through my social medias and stuff, if you'd like to send me an email, you can send that at journeywithacinephile@gmail.com. You can send me any sort of feedback, or if you have any questions or anything, go ahead and shoot them there, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Or if you want to send me any screener links or anything like that, anything podcast related, you can send it via that way. If you'd like to read any of the written reviews, I'll direct you to Reviews of the Dead, and that's horrorreview.webnode.com. If you'd like to become friends with me on Facebook, I'm David Michigan Garrett Jr. On Twitter, I'm Buckeye from Mish. Letterboxd, I'm David OSU. On Instagram, I'm David OSU87. On Threads, I'm David OSU87. And then Journey with a Cinephile has its own Instagram at Journey with a Cinephile, all one word. Now, all of these ones I will be sharing like my ratings on, whatnot. I know for Letterboxd, all of the reviews are going to be for horror and non-horror alike. Instagram, I will be sharing over there is my different like posters and everything for things that I'm reviewing. My personal account, you might see some personal pictures every now and then if I can remember to take them. And then, kind of same thing for Threads. And then Journey with a Cinephile is going to be more of just kind of posting podcast-related different stuff over there. And I'll also direct you to the Nightclub Discord channel, as I have a little section over there where we have some good conversations. I post all of my reviews and any new podcast episodes or some of the things I'm watching when I actually have time to post that. So keep an eye out over there, and I'll have the link for that and everything else in the show notes there. And then I'm also going to direct you, a way that you can actually listen to the show is going to be through the Pod Nation TV. This is a streaming service and everything like that. There will be a link in the blog posts for all of my episodes, so if you'd like to listen to it that way, it's kind of a cool little thing. You can definitely do that through like Roku TV, and there's some other apps for it as well, just as another way for you to consume this podcast if you decide to. There's also a lot of other great shows that are on that network as well. And for my next episode, it's going to be 283 as I move and continue on and doing my Voyage through the Fives. The 2 featured reviews, I was originally going to do something else, but then something hit Shudder here, and that's going to be The Rule of Jenny Penn. I've actually started watching that last night, so that'll be one of the featured reviews that I have here. That'll be my 2025 release. And then I'm going to be pairing that up with Werewolf of London. This is one that I've heard about, been curious to kind of check out, so I'm going to watch that one here. And then my Voyage through the Fives rewatch is going to be a Herschel Gordon Lewis film, Color Me Blood Red, one that I haven't seen for a good handful of years, so I've been meaning to check that one out. And then I'm going to be starting to do my rewatches here for 2025. I'm going to be checking out The Damned again, and then I'll have also more mini reviews for you as I kind of work through some of these more horror movies that I have on lists and whatnot, and see what I can do for you there. I don't think I have any screeners at this time, so that'll be just kind of the featured reviews that I do. So then all I have to say here in conclusion would be, that wraps up this episode of Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of horror cinema. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more deep dives into the macabre. Until next time, keep watching horror, and remember, fear is just a frame away.
It had been a wonderful evening, and what I needed now to give it the perfect ending